This is a spaceship. However, when middle-aged men with too much nostalgia start spewing obscene amounts of money, it's called Star Citizen. Today though, we won't quite go that far into the brain drain called space sims. Just a pinky toe dip. Today we'll look into less of a space turnip trucks that you can steer and travel in, but rather teleporting houses that Bethesda attempt to call spaceships. I'll then be covering everything, from flying, fighting, building, to even fucking your chosen discount UFO. So come along as we delve into the spaceships and everything you need to know about them.
Well, hey kids, do you want some drugs? Oh, sorry, I don't have any, but I have something better. Patreon! Yes, that makes videos happen.
Alright, and I'll go step by step and skip more obvious stuff that the game already teaches. No point in repeating, right? I'll have this segmented in several key parts, so feel free to skip around with timestamps. Otherwise, sit back in your crotchless pilot chair, grab a shit bucket, burn your pants, and remember, no one in space can hear you masturbate. Now let's then begin with the simplest thing, flying the damn thing. Now as you start the game lifting off in your first lunar dump truck, it's a very guided experience. Going forward, backward, shooting and boosting all are covered, including repairing. However, since I do detest the peasantry so much that I'd rather sit on a glass jar, I'll stick with PC Master Race controls for this segment. Still, the thing that Starfield fails to adequately explain to you are the following things. First of all, you can roll your ship. Now you can activate the scanner mode as well, and though it doesn't really do anything, it does allow you to land on points manually without opening another menu. You know, breaking the immersion. Oh, and there is a VATS-like targeting system available. However, that is unlocked through a skill first. And using the button prompt, you enter the mode and start shooting whatever you want. And most of the time it's really useful for boarding a ship, but we'll get into that. And you're also gonna use the same button in scanner mode for landing or docking with other ships and stations, or points of interest, like the planet stuff. And finally, there's the flight assist off mode, sort of speak. Basically, you can perform this trick while holding the button. It also allows you to use lateral thrusters, as in side to side, up and down thrusters. Not that you really would need them, but there we go. Now how about we delve into a depressing reality of trying to teach boomers how to operate the modern porn machines, otherwise known as computers. Here we're gonna take a look at what the failed UI designers plastered all over their screens. For weapons, boosting and other actions, they conveniently placed button prompts, and that's a decent thing.
A ship's engine has a sweet spot for better handling during turns. Draw your attention to the HUD. You'll notice a speed indicator in the lower left with a gauge that goes up and down as you adjust the throttle. Try to center the gauge so that it lines up with the center of the vertical bars to its right.
As for the power management, Jesus tap dancing on his own grave, Christ. Of all the hardcore space sim things to put in, Bethesda decided to lobotomize themselves and put in power management, but make it even worse. So basically how it works is very simple. The more points you got in that each bar, the faster energy regen happens. For weapons it refills the energy meter faster, for engines it increases the top speed and the boost regen, for shields it's basically the same thing, and for grav drive it simply increases the speed at which it activates, or more specifically decreases the delay before you jump. Now, the problem with this system is that you have to move each stupid pip individually out of the part and then back into the part you want. It's such a pizdes that you spend more time fucking around with this system than actually fighting enemies. So before you go anywhere, make sure that your power is set up, because random encounters will happen and they won't give you any time. And it's a very slow system. So you know more or less how to move around with your ship, dock and even land. Well, it's time for you to turn your beloved space jalopy into a proper teleporting house. Now to travel within the system, between planets or between systems themselves, open up your map. From the planet map you can set up a landing location or tab out for a wider system map and teleport there, and select the planet to travel to first. Confirm the destination and teleport there with a shitty cutscene. Zooming out on the galaxy map, you can do the same thing but for the systems. Select the destination and grav jump there. Here though, some systems can have multiple destinations, be those different planets, or in case of Olympus, it can be a binary star system. At this point, if immersion was a person, it'd be Alex Murphy from RoboCop.
Like cops.
But what determines if you can jump somewhere? What is jump range and how does it compare to fuel tanks? Well, as it happens, Bethesda designers have decided that such simple concepts as a fuel and resources would be too hard for the average casual fanboy to understand. So in Starfield, your teleporting house has no fuel. Or rather, the teleporting juice is infinite. It's like Gopniks in Latvia, Jesus Christ. Basically, jump range dictates if you can jump between 2 points directly, and fuel dictates how many nodes you can jump through. In gameplay terms, basically it doesn't matter what happens, it's gonna be a single loading screen versus multiple loading screens. And hold on, is that immersion dead in a corner? Oh my god! And as the last thing, as you're approaching one of the big cities, you might get scanned. Now the question is, you got something illicit. How do you avoid those scans? Well, as it happens, it's very simple. First of all, you need shielded cargo. You can only buy this in Red Mile. Equip it to your ship, store the stuff inside the ship, it will automatically sort the stuff out, and that's it. Of course, as long as the shielded cargo has the capacity for it. Alright, next up, let's take a look at our teleporting house's stats. Systems and reactor power are exactly the same as the power distribution system. Then you see hull, cargo, shield, and fuel capacities, all pretty much self-explanatory. And that includes shielded cargo capacity, which is a separate number for some fucking reason, but okay. The only 3 stats from this list that might interest you are the crew size, how many people you can shove inside this blinking med shack, the mass, which is utterly meaningless stat, trust me. And finally, the value. That displays basically how much money have you spent on ship parts. However, that does not represent the selling price. Oh no, just like stealing bikes and girls' panties, the value rock bottoms as soon as you soil them. Now you also might notice a sign that reads registered or unregistered in the stat sheet. Well, what does it mean? Basically, your Uranus Express can be used no matter what its state. However, you can't modify or sell it before it's registered, which is where a chunk of money will fly out of the window and into a drain, faster than you can say competitive speed abortion. Essentially, this is a mechanic in the game that further fucks you over in terms of credits. So if you steal a ship, it's unregistered. So registering will cost about 10% of the ship's cost, and to sell it will cost maybe a bit above that, but that's about it. I certainly feel that pride and accomplishment right there. Alright then, well, let's jump into the skills affecting the piloting of the AstroTurd cruisers. Now the following skills are not recommended and sometimes even downright useless, and I would only recommend putting points in them if you got nowhere else to put them. Astrodynamics, more jump range, clearly not needed. Astrophysics, better scanning, also not needed. Then we got all the damage type increasement skills. All of them are unnecessary, especially in the early to mid game. Payload increases the cargo capacity of your ship. However, there is a problem. Your dude can carry infinite amount of cargo and still move just as fast, and your ship can fly no matter the weight. Yep, a space game about space and gravity as a thematic. And NASA involvement allows ships to fly no matter the weight. What the fuck were Bethesda smoking? Starship engineering improves repairs. Ultimately unnecessary as long as you don't get hit or have thick enough space condom. And intimidation, apparently good for piracy, but according to a few sources, the whole piracy thing is busted. Now I'll get more into it, but the skill itself is better really used for interactions with characters rather than space piracy. Now as for the next set of skills, these are very crucial, or at least the first couple of them. All the other ones are quite useful as well. So then starting with the most useful one, piloting. To get the best reactors and quickly build the best celestial fartmobiles, you'll need this maxed out as soon as possible. Then we have targeting, only you need 1 rank into it to get the ability. Essentially this will be needed for stealing and boarding ships, but it also could be helpful for combat overall. Starship designs, like piloting, it further unlocks more ship parts to equip. Shield systems increases the capacity of your space condom, so unless you want to be exploded, probably a good pick to have. Engine systems, more speed, more boost, and nice to have, that's about it. Aeronautic fusion, are very useful for a class A ship, but you unlock it as a tier 4 skill. So it's a very late game skill, at which point you already have a really good ship, so And finally, ship command. It simply increases your Cosmic Vomit Comet's crew capacity. But hold on, crew? Well, what do they do? Can I impregnate? It amazes me how little Starfield once more manages to do, this time explaining crew. Basically, each companion has a set of skills. These skills are very similar to yours, however, they are about a half as good as your own. Additionally, there are some other hidden things, like let's say a reactor point being added to their respective fields if they are part of the crew.
And now, in the space, if you take a look on the left hand side on my energy levels, like engines and shields, you can see this green bar on the bottom. The green bar appear because I have crew member with piloting, so my engines are boosted, and I have crew member with shields rank 3, so my shields are boosted. So my shields go higher than what I can even see on the ship tab when I open the ship tab if I press H on the keyboard. So it's 1800, but that does not include additional boost, this extra bar that I do have.
They buff your space drum truck by about 50% of the skill's equivalent, even if you don't have that skill yourself unlocked. For example, the top speed of your ship without boosting increases thanks to the crewmate, so these buffs can be rather very useful. For more information, Angry Turtle made a rather interesting explanation for the system, so I'll link it down below. Okay, you know what to do and what the stats say. Well, what's left is really to get a better, newer ship, right? Well, as you first arrive in the New Atlantis, you're greeted by a ship tech. Basically, this guy and similar guys like him in every major and some minor cities will offer a few services pertaining to your galactic cum bucket. For 1000 credits you can fully fix it up, or modify your smelly space barge, or maybe even buy a new one, or sell the old one. Also, every one of these ship techs seem to have a little bit different selection of ship parts for you to choose from. So I'll link down below a couple of useful links like INRA to find where to buy whatever you want. But as for the ship parts, you know, the things that allow you to immediately start repairing on the go, well, those parts you can't buy from these ship techs, but rather from the vendors inside the city. Depends on the city from city, but for example in New Atlantis you can buy it from the mercantile. Oh, and also make sure to put those ship parts inside the ship. Otherwise, in your inventory, they won't do squat. And that's pretty much all the information you need before getting into ship modifications and building. Alright, so you want a new, better coke wagon. Well, what do? Well, if you got money, you could technically buy one. But, well, I don't find it as interesting as building one yourself. Right off the bat, you meet your first ship technician, and within the modification menu, you can choose either to upgrade your existing ship or modify it completely, entering the build menu. However, before you jump into that, you need to understand how ships are classified in Starfield. So, there are A, B, and C class ships. However, the only thing that determines the class of a ship is the reactor. With that reactor also comes a couple of limitations. For example, A-class ships are the smallest with the least amount of power, but also with the highest top speed and maneuverability. While on the other hand, C-class ships are, well, completely opposite. And while you can equip any A-class part onto a C-class ship, the other way around is not possible. And that's about it. So whether a ship is a hauler or a combat shitter is a vague statement. Hell, it can identify as a combat chopper for all I care. Right then, well, let's get into modding your ship. And to make it a bit simpler, you can open up the upgrade screen instead. This is a simplified modification screen for a quicker, simpler way for straight up upgrading parts that you already have on your ship. However, to properly make the ship your own and add parts to it, well, you're gonna have to delve into the ship builder. Now, I won't go into a big detail about this stuff since I already covered it and I'll link it down below, but the long story short, the bare minimum of a ship requires 8 parts. Cockpit, reactor, grav drive, thruster, landing bay, landing ports, landing gear, and fuel tank. Oh no! Oh, this is just the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Oh, this is so bad. Yes, you don't need the space condom, and yes, you don't need the space dicks. Nor even the booty. In fact, the cockpit already has a little bit of cargo space. And if there are problems with the build, the flight check tab will spew out errors. However, just like coders at Bethesda, feel free to ignore any warnings. Now as for adding parts, well, you can open up the list of things and manually snap them onto the pathetic excuse you dare to call a spaceship is one way of doing it, but it's not exactly the most ergonomic one. Instead, try mousing over the part you want to add the part to, then opening the list. Not only it will snap to the part, but it also will whittle down the list of things that can be attached. Now, one thing of note, ladders the game places on its own. There's really no way to set them or predict where they are gonna be put, unless it's the only option. So now the next question is, how do you balance the ship, or what do you even need to consider for it? Well, ultimately, the more dildos you strap onto it, the heavier it gets. The heavier it is, the less mobility. However, this in turn can be solved by strapping another thruster on it. For example, A-class ships, being the fastest ones, still can't go above 150 meters a second, while C-class ships can't reach over 130. As for mobility for every ship, it's more of a percentile number, and it always is maximum at 100, and you can't surpass it. Another thing to keep in mind is that multiple modules may have multiple versions, like for example HABs. There are workshop HABs, there are infirmary HABs, all of them have a little bit different layout, and some of them even have workstations, and those can come in handy quite a bit. Oh, and speaking of building ships, well, unfortunately you can't build a ship from complete scratch. Another design oversight by Bethesda, yay! But to make building ships a bit easier, you can land on a planet anywhere in the system, build an outpost, put down the landing pad, and from there you have the access for the whole system's offer of the ship parts available. Of course, different systems have different parts, blah yada yada, but there you go. Again, to help out finding parts and where to buy them, I'll link down below INRA. Oh, and finally, the ship building system in of itself is quite, fucked. Sometimes it will show up errors of unattached parts when actually everything is attached. In this case, to fix, just double click anywhere on the ship and see what parts light up. Things that don't are not attached, apparently. Just reattach them and that should do the trick. Also, holding control will select multiple parts and move and delete. There's also, of course, the copy paste, as well as redo and undo. But before you're modding your ship, even if it is adding a simple part, pick up your dropped crap, because sometimes the builder will delete everything. And that's pretty much all you need to know about how to build a spaceship. And of course, the most important thing, how to swap ships. Well, there is this handy dandy little button down here. All the cargo you had is transferred into that ship, or your inventory. Most likely your inventory. But what about stealing a spaceship? Well, for this one, again, I've made a dedicated guide, link down below and all that stuff, but basics are, first, you can only dock with the last hostile in the area. Second, to dock with a hostile ship, the shields must be down. And third, you must be close enough for the prompt to show up. Targeting skill in this case helps killing engines, disabling the ship and making it easier, but not necessarily needing it for docking. Once you're aboard, kill the crew and sit in the ship's throne of shame. Now here you do have to undock with the ship and then do the loading screen. Fly somewhere else so that your own ship despawns and now it registers as your ship. You can't just sit in the stolen ship, go back to your own one and leave. It won't be added in that case. Now as for selling the ship, yeah, remember that registering? Yeah, well here it comes in. No worries, registering price is about 10 to 9% of the ship's value. And at the same time, selling the ship itself is about 10 to 11%. So basically the profit you're getting is immersive. So the only reason why you would steal a spaceship is really to get a mildly better upgrade or a higher class reactor if you had the access for it. Well, that or the cheaper platform upon which to start building your own ship. So yeah, in that sense it is better than buying pre-made ships just to build your own. But okay, maybe you don't want to steal a ship. What about piracy? Well, here the intimidation skill shines. Or does it?
Check our weapons loadout. You sure you want to go down this road?
How? How am I supposed to check what? How am I supposed to check your loadout? Like, the game doesn't allow that. So, like many people have noticed, there is no way to determine if your ship is higher threat to your enemy. None whatsoever. Oh, and on a separate note, fuck you, Bethesda! Oh, is that immersion lying on the ground still dead? Oh yeah, it is. So, generally speaking, it's a blind toss if the ship you hail will submit to your intimidation. However, there is no penalty for doing so. If it fails, you either can attack or just say, never mind, I'm just going away. Totally misunderstanding. Seriously, what the fuck is this game design? However, when it succeeds, you get a bounty for the stuff you stole, and unlike pickpocketing, there really is no reason to do it in that case. At least with pickpocketing you can say you get a keycard. And that's about all you need to know about the meteoric manure mowers. Now, I did skip over weapons, for example, but you can find out a little bit more in the dedicated build video that I did. Ultimately, these teleporting Winnebagos offer relatively little gameplay thanks to, well, teleportation. However, it's still a nice introduction into the space sim type of gameplay. So for those new at this sort of a gameplay, well, welcome, there are definitely better examples of it. Though maybe not No Man's Sky, but regardless of that. If this helped you out, well, maybe you want to help me out a little bit by tossing $1 on my Patreon. But beside of that, I'll then see you next time.